Hello everybody and welcome back to the building of the Keil Kraft Ladybird. And as you can probably notice, we are in the final home straight on this build. I've completed the installation of the rudder. Hope you can see that. In fact, we'll put a battery in, turn the transmitter on, hatch off, held on with the magnets. Managed to pick up a pin there by the looks of it. And none of this is actually finally installed, it's just pushed in for the moment. If I put the battery on, hit the switch, drop it down so you can actually see it. More than enough movement there. I'm sure I'll have to trim that down. So the final thing to do is to cover the tail and install the elevator. And that brings me to one of my pet hates, and that is installing the hinges. So I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm sure it's not the only way to do it. I'm sure it's not the best way because I really do dislike doing this. But I'll show you how I'm going about it. So as you can see, I have two of the hinges installed. I'm using proper working hinges, not CA hinges or Mylar hinges. These are proper working hinges. They're very free, which is what you want. And as I intend using a smaller battery than I would normally use, it's going to only be, well, something like a 300 milliamp. This is a 2000 milliamp, I believe. I'll not be flying for extended periods of time. 2 or 3 flights would be enough, I would think. This is how I'm going to go about doing it. Instead of just cutting it with a knife, I actually find a very fine drill about the same diameter, or sorry, the same thickness as the hinge. And then I'm going to chain drill this out, holding it either side, and then you can feel, if you're starting to wander off, you can feel the impression of the drill coming through. Keep it square. And with all chain drilling, don't try to go right next to the hole. Miss out the diameter of the drill, leave that gap, and then work your way along. And then I'll cut it out with the knife, because it's really not enough just to put a slot in. You need to remove the material, and obviously the drill will do this. It's just the way I've gone about doing these particular hinges. It's still not a lot of fun. I hate doing it. Okay, so I've got a set of chain drilled holes there. I think you can see them. I'm going to take the knife and cut along, bit of sellotape there, cut along them and remove that material. See, it's starting to come out there. And then I'll try the hinge in. They're not glued in obviously at this stage. This is just a trial run of fitting them. Let's see how easily it goes in or otherwise. Just watch that pin, that's it. There we go. That's in. Need straightening up a little. There you go, one hinge in. I'll carry on and do the last one, and then I'll cut the slots in here the same and cover it. And we'll come back when I'm actually at the stage of doing the final straights of covering, I think. There we have it. That task is now completed. Elevator's installed. It only remains to cover, doculam, then tissue, and I need to actually put a horn in here, the control horn, and that's the build completed. So let's press on and get that done. There we have it. That's the doculam applied to one side. I'll repeat that on the other part. Then we'll get it covered in the tissue. I'll show you that as a time lapse perhaps. Then it's just a case of putting it onto the aircraft, onwards and upwards. Both tail surfaces have now been covered in the doculam, and for the benefit of those who haven't seen this technique, I'm about to apply the tissue and tack it only along the edges as if I was covering an open frame without the doculam underneath. So, golden rule, start on the long edge, and I'm going to use, actually I'm not going to use that. I was going to use full strength dope, but instead the sensible thing to do is to use the Pritt stick. You just need a light smear. You don't have to go crazy with this, along the edge, and I'll use the dope. I'll put the lid back on because I'll be high as a kite if I don't. And I'll use the full strength dope only to seal the edges. So I'm pulling it along the long edge first, then across. Now some tissue is good enough quality that you can do this damp, and you can manipulate the tissue when it's wet, either with water or, as Mark Robinson does, he uses a polyester varnish, and I'm afraid this is fairly poor quality tissue, and if I did that with this it would simply rip it apart, so I'm not going to do that. Trim it to size, leaving about an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch overlap. The doculam is actually far more difficult to cut than the tissue, and by that I don't mean the resistance, it's something about the quality of the plastic, I think. So I'll trim this just a little over size all the way around. Get rid of those bits, otherwise they'll stick to everything. Feathering around the edge, making little nicks so that I can push this over without creasing the upper surface too much. And apply a little more along the edge. Like so. And then I'll repeat on the other side. And then I'll shrink it with water. So you spray it with the water and it goes quite alarmingly wrinkled. Don't worry about that, it'll come out. You can speed it up with a hairdryer if you wish. And then I'm going to apply the dope. So there we go. That's obviously before it's been doped. I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll do all of them, spray them, and then we'll be ready to seal the edges with the full strength dope, add some trim, and finally add them onto the model. We've now covered this, both sides, and before I shrink it, I'm going to seal the join. Don't think it's strictly necessary, this, to be honest with you, but I like to do it with the dope, full strength dope. Sealed along the edge. This, because it's full strength, takes but moments to actually go off and dry. So I'm just sealing along the edge. We'll do that. I'll get the spray out. Show you what it looks like when it gets sprayed, in case you decide to do this. It might save you from panicking too much, because it doesn't look pretty. But that's sealed all the way around now. Happy with that. Let it dry for a second. I'll get the spray out, show you it's sprayed, and then I'll carry on and do the rest off camera. Okay? I'm going to mist this now. I want to do it away from the table because obviously everything will get wet. But there you can see what it looks like there. It's fairly taut before it's sprayed. And that's what it looks like when it's wet. It's pretty horrid. But if I put the hairdryer on it, find where I've put the thing. There you go. Wires everywhere. There we go, ready to be doped. I think you'll agree that gives a very taut finish to it. I'll put some thin down dope on there and away we go. Here we have the elevator dry fitted, all is well, but before anything gets glued in, I'm applying a little bit of Vaseline to the hinge in preparation for the gluing, because the last thing we need is for the hinges to be glued solid. We want the hinges glued in, not the hinge glued solid. So I'm applying some Vaseline to this side. I'll flick it over and apply some to the other side. Then I'll pull them out, apply some, in this case I'm going to use 5-minute epoxy because there's only 4 of them, to both sides, push them in, and I'll wipe off the excess Vaseline once they've set, and every now and again I'll keep moving them to make sure everything's free. And then that's the control surface is done. All I have to do is hook up a servo linkage from here to a horn which I'll put onto this side, and that's that bit done. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. If you have, then it won't be too long and this model will be doing a maiden. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would be great if you haven't already done so. And if you are a subscriber, or even if you're not, please give it a thumbs up, because that helps spread the word to others. Thanks for watching now. Take care.